Well, we're back chasing the railroad after the great Thistle slide of '83.
Right.
And this week we thought we'd go down the Marysvale Branch all the way to Marysville.
Right, there's parts I don't even know. I've heard about it, my parents talked about it, but I've never really knew where it was.
Yeah, see what grade survives, what industries survive, what's left.
What's left?
Because there must be stuff left there.
There's got to be some grade left of the other
34
line.
years, it's probably...
Most of it's gone.
Quite a ghost railroad by now.
Right.
Probably even a lot of the grade is long gone.
Oh yes, it started disappearing right away.
So let's scope this out, the Marysvale Branch on the Rio Grande. Well, last week, as you recall, we looked at the giant landslide that destroyed the Rio Grande main line and took the town of Thistle right along with it, reducing the entire area into something of a wetlands. Now, the tail track of the Y was the Marysvale Branch, which extended into the very heart of Utah, and it was totally destroyed in the Upper Canyon. And it was now completely cut off from the rest of the railroad. The Marysvale Branch was about 140 miles long, and as you can see, it really dipped deep right into the very heart of Utah. Starting in Thistle, the line ran south, paralleling one of the great drives in America, Highway 89, up a grassy mountain pass called Hilltop in Sanpete County. Now, this is where Karyn is from, so she's very familiar with this old line.
Our travels took us to a small town called Millburn. I grew up around here, so this really feels like home. Here is the grade, and these buildings, there's so many of them around made out of this, we called it quarry rock, but oolitic limestone. To see these old buildings, even in this tumble down condition, it seems like home.
Here we see a section gang working at Indianola just north of Hilltop. A couple of infamous local boys here, that would be Robert Leroy Parker and sitting on the handcart, Harry Lombaugh. Now they decided that robbing the trains would be easier than laying track. You know them better as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
The railway made its way from the little town of Millburn down through Oak Creek and meandered around to a little town called Fairview. Check that out.
This is really cool. First time I saw this, I thought it was about to fall down. It's an old mill, but some people have fixed it up and they're turning it into their house.
Oh, that's so cool. It's right by my uncle's parents' house, where the track went right through their front yard.
Yeah, the main line was on the right side of this building, and a little spur ran right up underneath here. Oh, check this.
No, what is this?
I love these old cars
They're
around
here and there, aren't they? It doesn't take long for the train tracks to end up down in Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant has a historic main street. All of the buildings here are on the historic register. They're just very cool looking.
They're really neat. I love Mount Pleasant. It's such a well-preserved little town. And it had this really neat depot back in the day. Really classic Rio Grande depot.
Yes, I remember the depot when it sat down on 5th West where the double tracks were.
I'll bet, back in its early days, it was a pride of the community.
It had to be.
Just such a beautiful little place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's really pretty right there. And this is how I remember it. We crossed those tracks every day on the school bus to go to North Sanpete High School, where I attended high school.
But somebody decided to move the thing.
They did that in my senior year of high school.
They drug it up here when the tracks were still running. They drug it up by Highway 89 to use it as an antique shop.
Yeah.
It isn't an antique shop anymore. It seems to have fallen on some hard times.
Something.
They got a neat caboose and everything. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a shame that they moved it, but at least it's been preserved.
Exactly.
Now, not far from the depot, you will find some 15-inch gauge track laid on the old right-of-way. Danny Oldroyd is rebuilding the Sanpete Valley Railway, or let's just say a half-scale recreation of the Sanpete Valley Railway, and part of it travels on the old Marysvale Branch right-of-way. He's been working on this for years. He's put in a few structures and whatnot. I took these pictures about, 4 years ago, I think. The very first thing he created was this Sanpete Valley locomotive in 1/2 scale. Check it out. He built it here in his machine shop in Mount Pleasant. Now, the original Sanpete Valley Railroad was established in May of 1882, and it was originally built as a 3-foot narrow gauge railroad to move coal from Manti, Utah down the canyon to Nephi, Utah. It's marked here with the red line, and it interchanged with the Marysvale Branch at Ephraim and Manti.
The train tracks leave Mount Pleasant and travel right alongside of Highway 89 toward Ephraim. The grade is still here and much intact. It just seems like yesterday I would be driving along this highway and the train would be going right alongside the highway. The tracks go along Highway 89 and continue on to Straits Junction, titled for the people who had their house moved when the highway came through.
There used to be an old depot here. This was the Spring City Depot for Spring City, which is actually about a mile from here, but the depot was outside of town.
This is where the Straits house sat, but it had to be torn down when the highway came through.
Spring City is an absolutely beautiful little village here in the center of Utah. It's well known because it's on the National Register of Historic Places because it's such a well-preserved example of 1860s architecture. Many of the homes here are constructed out of oolite, oolitic limestone, and some of them are brick, which was locally made. It's become something of an artist's community, and some people have second homes here, but a lot of like-minded individuals have come here to preserve the little town. This is the Orson Hyde House. It was actually designed by my great-great-grandfather for his friend Orson Hyde. If you follow the show, you will know that this is my brother David. David fell in love with Spring City. This is my mother on the right at Das Cafe in Spring City. David and his wife decided they wanted to buy a house here and retire, and so they went out on the hunt for a house that they could buy. There were several likely suspects, but this is the house that they ultimately settled on. It's actually built of limestone, but it's been covered over with stucco. David never really relocated. He spent a good deal of time down here with his wife Myra. So I got caught up in the dream and decided that I would buy a house, this little job right here. But after Mom and David both passed away, I've sort of lost interest in the place.
The tracks leave Straits Junction heading south to Ephraim, Utah, home of Snow College. The tracks are still clearly visible in many areas. Coming up onto
Walmart. They built Walmart right on top of the grade.
Yes.
I think the tracks went right through the apparel department.
Yes. But there's some remnants of the railroad still left.
There's a narrow little strip of land running alongside the road here, which used to be the switching yard of the Sanpete Valley Railway. These houses have actually been built on that narrow little strip of land, so they don't have much of a backyard. Now later on, that switching yard became part of the Denver and Rio Grande and a switching yard for them. The grade at the north end of the yard is intact. Of course, this was originally the main line of the Sanpete Valley Railroad, but later it became a branch line of the Denver and Rio Grande heading off to the turkey plant.
There was another little branch that ran back north again to a little town called Moroni Feed Company. This is the feed mill, and part of the tracks branched off and went here. There was some sort of a Y right here, I remember, but it was all underwater after the flooding happened in 1983. Here is the feed company feed mill that makes the feed for all the turkeys that are produced here, and the train at one time backed right into this area. These are turkey barns. There's quite a few of them in the Sanpete Valley, as the turkey industry is huge here. If you've ever eaten a Norbest turkey, chances are it was raised right here. This is the Moroni Feed Company Turkey Processing Plant. This is a huge industry here in Sanpete County raising turkeys, and they are one of the largest employers in the area. The trains came down this grade and were backed into the turkey plant at one time to be loaded with turkeys. After the trains were loaded, they were backed up into this little area right here.
While the standard gauge tracks ended at this point, if you look closely, you can see the grade of the old Sanpete Valley Railroad. It was actually run by the Denver and Rio Grande for a while, but it ran down this canyon to Nephi. At Nephi, the Sanpete Valley Railroad connected with the Union Pacific. Before the Rio Grande came along, this was their only connection to a major railroad.
Right here was where the depot stood for the Sanpete Valley Railroad here in Moroni, and it was kind of a modest little building and very ramshackle when I knew it. I actually remember climbing up on the deck and looking through the windows and playing on the tracks until somebody ran me off. The line continued south of Ephraim on to Manti. Manti is known for its beautiful LDS temple located on a grassy hill. The temple is made of oolitic limestone. On the west side of Manti, there's some interesting artifacts.
Artifacts? I'd call it junk myself, but it's neat junk.
Yeah, something from some other space and time.
I love this coal loading ramp. It's built out of old railroad rails, but I think they used to back trucks onto it.
Growing up, there was always this kind of stuff lying around. Old cars and thingamajigs. I was never sure what any of it was.
But look here, you can easily see where the tracks went, and these are sheep pens. But what the heck is this thing?
Back in 1979, I was driving around town as my aunt lived in Manti, and I came across this large building. And it's always been a source of mystery as what is it and what was it used for? I'd asked around about it, but no one seemed to know at the time. Later, I found out it was called the Pea Factory. It was a cannery that canned peas and corn. At one time, it was also a sewing plant. Man, I wonder if it could have been part of the parachute plant that was down here during World War II.
This, of course, was originally narrow gauge grade on the Sanpete Valley Railroad, but later became standard gauge Rio Grande. But you can clearly see where the tracks were.
The line leaves Manti and heads south toward Gunnison, but I didn't know there was a coal mine in Sterling. That accounts for the road that goes in there. It's probably railroad grade from Sanpete Valley Railroad. Gunnison is the home of the Casino Star Theater, a cool old theater that's been completely restored. Out where the tracks were is the Hermanson roller mill.
It's a classic looking mill, and wouldn't that make a beautiful model?
Leaving Gunnison, we head south. There's a salt mine by Redmond, and coming up on Richfield, which is a pretty good sized little city. And Elsinore, my goodness, I had no idea there was a sugar beet factory there.
The line now enters Marysville Canyon, which is probably the most scenic part of the whole line.
Here is the Sevier River, which flows through Marysville Canyon. Marysville Canyon is a scenic drive, and one can clearly see the railroad grade from the road that goes through Marysville Canyon. The grade's in really great shape. In fact, it's been turned into a bike trail. There's a program here in the state of Utah called the Rails to Trails program. In this case, I'm glad this program exists. And there's this great tunnel.
Now, typically we try to not be boring, but this is the kind of boring I really like to see. Check this thing out. I'm always surprised at what a small amount of rock they end up boring under, but this thing really shows its age.
No kidding, look at that, my goodness.
It's really cool, though. I just love these old railroad tunnels.
I wanted to walk back in there, but the fence kept me from doing it.
And this is Utah's iconic roadside attraction, Big Rock Candy Mountain. Since the freeway bypassed this place, it's sort of fallen on hard times. But check this out, a motel made out of cabooses and railroad cars.
A while back when I was visiting the Big Rock Candy Mountain, I happened to stumble across all of this. I'm going, what in the world are they doing with all these train cars? So I had to stop and see.
We stopped by here like last year and they were just barely getting open. It's all open now though, but we got to see the inside.
They're like little houses on the inside.
It's really cool. So we're going to come back down here and spend the night in a few months.
No, absolutely. Let's grab the train guys and go.
Looks like a lot of fun to me. A lot of different kinds of cabooses and even a passenger car. It's called Caboose Village.
How fun. We leave the Caboose Village and heading south on Highway 89. The railroad grade or bike trail is clearly visible from the highway. We travel past the Big Rock Candy Mountain. That was always a favorite place of mine when I was a little girl.
Marysville is a beautiful little town, kind of a typical gold mining town, I guess. You can see that at some point in time the gold ran out.
Something happened.
Yeah, but there's a kind of a new tourist life here, which I guess happens with a lot of these mine towns, that now they've become tourist destinations.
Yeah, most of the little towns turn out that way.
But you can see that the thing fell on disrepair after the gold ran out. The grade runs right along the east side of town, along Turkey Creek. Check out this neat old wagon bridge. It dates clear back to the days of the early railroad. This was the location of the mill for the bullion mine and was the absolute end of track on the Marysvale Branch. The grade proceeds south for a few hundred yards past this point here onto private property, so we couldn't get down there and see the actual end of the track. But Professor Google here was happy to share some overhead images with us. You can see a pond left over from the mill, and if you look closely, you can see that the ties are still there at the very, very end of track. Well, that was interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of really interesting, fun grade.
Yeah, I was surprised. I've been through Marysville.
Yeah.
You know, maybe pulled off and got gasoline or something, but I've never been back in the back part of the town.
It's a fun, and that grade going down the canyon. And a motel made out of cabooses, kind of a B&B or whatever that is.
I stumbled across that when they were first putting it in. I was on a trek and I was like, what the heck are they doing with cabooses?
That's really fun. So there's some neat stuff going along the old grade there. And the guy building the 15-inch gauge railroad right on top of the old grade. So that's really fun. So there's some nifty stuff going on the old Marysvale Branch, even though the railroad is long gone.
They need to keep the history of it going.
It's a wonderful old ghost railroad, as it turns out.
Right.
Well, if you liked this movie, do share it with your friends, and you could even hit the thumbs up if you felt so inclined. Yeah. The bigger issue is if you're not a subscriber, you want to be a subscriber because it's a community and it's all these people, and we all sort of work together and hang out, and that makes us cool.
Right.
And so to become a subscriber, you click on the blue button, zoink, right there. It says subscribe, right? Takes you to the channel, makes you a subscriber, and you can now watch all of those, and you'll be notified whenever we upload the show. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again next week with some more massive screwing around. See you then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.